Alright guys, we're back with another episode. So I need to apologize first because it has been a long time since I've done a video, and WandaVision episodes have been going on for a while now. We're up through episode 6 and I've only covered episodes 1 and 2, and so I apologize, and we'll cover episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6 today. You may have noticed that the camera quality is a little bit better. Hopefully the sound's a little bit better, and the lighting is definitely better. There's no Phantom of the Opera. Hallelujah. Now, to jump right into WandaVision episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I'm not really going to do an individual breakdown of each episode. So it might take a while, and we'll instead kind of do a little bit of a summary, pick up the highlights, and then kind of speculate where it will be going with episodes 7 and 8 and what we can expect. Obviously, this is all theoretical and spoilers for those that haven't watched it. If you don't care, then perfect, we'll just go on. Alright, the highlight in episode 3 is probably the fact that Wanda gives birth to 2 boys. And so this is pretty important because not only is there just this crazy amount of time that passes very quickly in order for her to be pregnant and then also deliver, but she gives birth to her 2 sons, Tommy and Billy. Now, these twin boys are in the comics and are known to have powers, which we later see in the latest episode, episode 6, during the Halloween episode, and we can see that one of them has speed powers, just like their uncle, which we'll get to in a minute. I know you're all thinking about it. I know you all want to talk about it, and we will, don't worry. Oh yeah. And then the other son has powers somewhat similar to Wanda, and telekinesis, things like that. And so they don't know that initially when Wanda first delivers or has her babies, but it's something that a lot of hardcore fans kind of knew from the beginning, and kind of knew that this was going to set us up. And I don't know if that Wanda having kids, if those are like the first mutants or whatever that kind of going to introduce X-Men, but we later find out, have a little bit more of a teaser in a future episode, I think in episode 5. It's really important because in episode 3 we kind of get better introduced to Geraldine, who ends up playing a bigger role in the rest of the series, and we kind of see that with the beginning of episode 4. But in episode 3, Geraldine is there, and she is there helping deliver the baby, and she's kind of her friend. But then she says something interesting about how Wanda's brother died from Ultron. And once Wanda realizes what's kind of going on, she kind of flips, and she sends Geraldine flying, sends her through her little bubble, the hex is what they call it. And then we pick up on further episodes, and we kind of get a little bit more of Geraldine's background and how she's involved, which is actually it's really fun to see. And she is an amazing actress. I don't remember her name, the actress's name, but she kills it. She's awesome, and she's probably one of my favorite actors in the show, with obviously Wanda being up there and Vision. Those would be my top 3 actors for sure in this series so far. Geraldine's actual name is Monica Rambeau, and her mom was friends with Captain Marvel from the Captain Marvel movie, and then we get introduced to her as a little child. But in the next episode, in episode 4, we get to see Monica, a flashback of her when she blips back. So we find out that she was blipped by Thanos. She comes back, and we kind of see what that looks like, what the chaos that kind of happens when all of a sudden the population just doubles because everyone's returning back. and she's in a hospital, and the hospital's just nuts because they are over capacity now because so many people just showed up. But I really liked that, being able to see that, because we didn't get to see anything like that in the past episodes, or because they kind of joke it off just a little bit in the student video of like people showing up, some band people showing up in the middle of a basketball game. But other than that, we don't really get to see what it looks like when everyone blips back and what people's reactions are and what's going on. And so we get to see what happens when people blip back. And with Monica, her mom was in the hospital dying of cancer, was having surgery to remove it. But she finds out that the surgery was a success, but she ended up passing away because the cancer came back. And so between those 5 years of when Thanos blipped everyone gone, and then when the Avengers got everyone back, her mom had passed away. And so she didn't get to say goodbye or anything like that. And so she does a really good job of conveying how sad she is and what a loss it was to her. So I love that. So another fun thing to see is how Monica ends up in the Hex as Geraldine. And she ends up teaming up with Jimmy Woo. And if you're not familiar, Jimmy Woo is in Ant-Man 2 and plays Ant-Man's, I want to say handler, but like probation officer essentially. And so there's a lot of fun things in there that they do, and in Ant-Man 2. And so he's kind of a silly kind of character, but they bring him into this show, which is a little bit more serious. It's definitely not as funny as Ant-Man 2. But because of that, it doesn't quite work. The dynamic that he brings kind of makes it a little bit awkward. And so I don't really love that. Also, when Darcy shows up as well, it's kind of like the same dynamic where she's kind of a comedy relief in Thor 1 and 2, but it doesn't quite work with the show. And I also don't love her quite as much as an actress as well. And so those two kind of bring the show down a little bit for me personally, but obviously if you like them, that's great. Typically they do a pretty good job with their comedy relief, but it just doesn't really quite translate to the small screen in this TV show, at least in this series. In episode 4, we just kind of find out what is all happening with the outside world and how they're reacting to Wanda's Hex, her little bubble that she's created, where she's having this TV show and that they can watch it on the outside. You see it as her life as a TV sitcom. So Agnes is the neighbor, and she seems to appear all the time, but really in interesting situations. So in this time, she ends up showing up whenever the boys decide to grow or are thinking about it. And she just plays along with Wanda and tells her, oh yeah, we can redo that if you want. We can just take it from the top and reverse things, do like a new take. And then she also doesn't care that Wanda is using powers in front of her. She's very nonchalant about it, seems very casual about it. Vision starts freaking out. He's like, whoa, Wanda, like, we need to take it easy. Like, we don't want Agnes to realize that we have powers. And Wanda's like, I don't care anymore. Like, we shouldn't have to hide our powers. And obviously we can see where she's coming from, but also this is what Vision was kind of afraid of, and he wants to kind of have this normal life. But at the same time, he also starts realizing that something is off. That the fact that Agnes doesn't react to the fact that she has powers, that the boys just grow up right in front of them, how fast they are developing, doesn't bat an eye. And then when the boys have a dog and they're watching the dog, they're trying to hide it, Agnes just walks right in with the exact thing they needed, which is a doghouse. And so I feel like Agnes knows more than what she's leading on. A lot of the people in the town just kind of understand that Wanda's in charge. They have no more free will. She's overpowering their will, and they're just kind of going along with it. But Agnes seems to be a little bit ahead of that. too easygoing, too willing to participate, and just kind of seems to know what is going to happen before it actually happens, and which makes me to think that she is playing a bigger role in all of this than what we think, and even from what Wanda believes. And so I think that's really interesting. And at the end of the episode, we see that she shows the boys can't find the dog, and Agnes brings the dog and shows that, oh yeah, he died because he was eating some of my plants, which were poisonous, and the dog passed away. And so the boys are considering growing up again, but Wanda explains to her why that's not okay and how they need to deal with their emotions. So in episode 5, we start to see a clash kind of happen between Wanda and Vision. Vision is becoming more and more aware of all of the things that Wanda is doing to actually manipulate this town that they're in, Westview. And it starts when Vision's at work, and he ends up like touching this guy on the head and able to bring him out of his trance with Wanda, and breaks Wanda's control over him. And he just starts to panic and cry, and he says he's in pain, he's wondering about his family. And then Vision is like, okay, I'm gonna put him out of his misery, and kills him. No, he just puts him back under Wanda's control. And then he really starts to understand that something is going on. Things are not as they seem. Wanda isn't telling the full truth, and he realizes that Wanda is controlling everything around him. And so he gets to a point where he's like, Wanda can't control me anymore. Like, this is ridiculous. And so he confronts Wanda about it. And Wanda doesn't want to talk about it. She's done with it and just kind of wants to put an end to the argument. And she starts to roll the credits for their sitcom. And Vision is like, no, I'm not having this. We're talking about this right now. And so they're talking, and she's like, Wanda, you can't control me anymore. And she's like, I kind of can, because I'm the one that brought you back to life. Obviously, she doesn't say that per se, but she's thinking it all right. And then as they're arguing, they're both flying, they're getting into each other's faces, and then there's a knock on the door. And Vision's like, Wanda, like, you can't get out of this. And she's like, it wasn't me. And so they open the door, and it's Pietro, Wanda's dead brother. Crazy. The interesting thing is that it's actually Pietro, aka Quicksilver, from the X-Men series that was done, and he's actually the fan favorites highlight of the X-Men series with the reboot that they did with X-Men First Class and all that. And they bring him. And so now that, this is kind of a side note, now that Disney owns Fox, they have control over X-Men, Fantastic Four, and they're wanting to implement these characters into the MCU. And so I don't know exactly. I don't actually believe that this character, Pietro, that shows up at Wanda's door is the one from the Fox universe X-Men series. But he shows up on the door and he's like, hey sis, it's me. Like, is this how you're gonna like welcome your brother? Like, let me in. And then we see a lot more interactions with Pietro in episode 6. And he gets along great with the brothers. He is an awesome uncle to them. But when Wanda and Pietro are alone, he starts to ask a lot more questions and I feel like he's trying to get information out of Wanda. And I think that someone is pulling the strings and trying to manipulate Wanda into telling them how she was able to create this dimension, this hex, this bubble where she's able to manipulate reality. but Wanda knows that Pietro looks different. That's not her brother that she grew up with and knows. And so she's kind of questioning him, and then in return he's questioning her because she's like, "Where's your accent?" And he's like, "Well, where's yours?" She's like, "Okay, yeah, you got me, touche." But he seems to be trying to like get information out of her. So it's interesting because Darcy, when she first sees Pietro, she's like, "Wanda recasted him?" Because she also recognizes that it's supposed to be her brother, but he's not look the same. But when Wanda is questioning and asking Pietro about how he got here, he says that he remembers being shot in the street and then her calling out to him, and so he came. But that seems questionable because he's dead. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds, and I hope we see that in episodes 7 and 8. Later in episode 6, we get to the reveal that Billy and Tommy have powers. Tommy has the same powers as Quicksilver, as his uncle. So he's super fast, he's speedy, whereas Billy has powers similar to his mom, similar to Wanda's, and she is not too surprised though that they have powers. And she's like, "Oh, just kind of be responsible," and things like that. But in the episode, they're trick-or-treating, but Vision's like, "I gotta figure out what's going on," and so he goes to explore, and he gets to near the boundaries of the hex, where most everyone is just kind of still because Wanda doesn't need to manipulate them. She doesn't need to think about it as much as those kind of more in the center of the town, because they don't really play a part in the sitcom, right? And so Vision ends up trying to get out of the hex, and he gets out, and so it seems like Hayward, who is the head of SWORD, has an ulterior motive in all of this, right? He tried to kill Wanda with the drone, and now when Vision is coming out, he doesn't go to help him. He doesn't seem to act concerned about those that are in there, and really wants to kill Wanda. And I believe that he wants Vision's body back. I don't know if it's so that he can make his own AI superhero. I don't know if it's because he wants the Mind Stone, which seems to be intact even when Vision leaves the hex. And so that could be a factor. He might want his hands on the Mind Stone. I don't know. But as Vision's getting out of the hex, his body's being torn apart and kind of being brought back into the hex. And Billy is able to sense that his dad's in pain. And so he tells his mom, Wanda, and Wanda doesn't actually know where he is. She can't locate him. And so she asks Billy if he can locate him. And he says he's on the outskirts. And so Wanda just expands her hex borders way far out. And this is where things get pretty interesting, and there's a lot of theories being thrown out there, because earlier in the episode, they get the test results on Monica and her health assessment, and it seems like her cells and her in science is being changed in her body. It's kind of mutated, right? X-Men mutants. And they think that if she goes back in there, it might be permanent. And so what's happening with when this is expanding, it's going out to a lot of the people that are in SWORD. So they get turned into clowns, their base gets kind of turned into a circus, and Darcy gets caught up in it because she was captured by SWORD. And so it'll be interesting to see if Darcy ends up getting mutant powers, and it's pretty likely 95% confident that Monica will get powers too. And so that'll be exciting to see, and hopefully we get to see that in episode 7 or 8, but I'm really excited. And so that's kind of the big thing that's happening right now. And it's interesting because Pietro does not seem concerned at all by the powers. He knows exactly what's going on around him. He knows that Wanda is manipulating everyone and kind of controlling them, and he's totally fine with it. He doesn't care. And so that's why it leads me to believe that he's actually, I don't know, a manifestation. He's not real. I think he is just trying to find out how Wanda created this hex, and possibly how she created life, right? Kind of by bringing Vision back to life, but also by having 2 kids with someone that's dead, technically. So that's kind of weird. And I don't know if Billy and Tommy, if they would be torn apart if they try to leave the hex, or if they'd be fine. That's a mystery. I don't know. And so I would love to hear from you guys and girls, because I know there's girls out there watching. I would love to know what your thoughts and opinions are on what is going to happen in episodes 7 and 8, what you're looking forward to. I'd also love to hear what your theories are in the comments down below. So please like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.